So, good evening, guys. On this Timor Criminal Late Night show. The thread today will be mostly about the few specifics when it comes to where the war is going. Within the group, I said that worst situation for the Ukrainians would be between the 10th and the 20th, and we are dead in the middle of that period where the Ukrainians right now are looking more and more on the brink of failure. They're going to lose Novomykhailovka within 5 to 10 days. They are probably going to lose with Novomykhailovka, Praskovika, which is not far from it. They are already being hammered in Semenovka, with the Russians completely clearing the western parts of Berdishi, although they cannot for the moment stay there due to FPV activities and artillery, of course. But the most problematic part right now is the continuous losses of air defense and rather assets. Something weird that is happening as well is that suddenly the Ukrainians are also losing weekly the same kind of material that the Russians have been losing, and this, unfortunately for them, is due to the adventure in the Russian border. I will speak to that on the second part of the space, and then the third part is mostly an overview of the front line as it stands. Mostly good, quote unquote, news. Some specific problems, notably, despite the good advance in and around Klishivka, there's still not enough to make the Ukrainians panic, completely leave Ivanyivske, and then also go back to Chasov Yar via Klishivka. If Klishivka is opened, as you guys know, then heights are open to go around the Ivanyivske poodle, let's call it like this, and avoid also Bogdanovka, and go straight to Chasov Yar from the side. So, first of all, the first problem is the oil situation. It's not that much the oil, but the refineries. For people who haven't been living this planet for the last 2 months, Ukraine started a massive drone campaign. Okay, massive would be exaggerating, but still, it's a comprehensive and wide enough drone campaign, which is hitting mostly refineries, so oil processing installations, and most of them are hitting one of the Achilles heels of these installations, which are the fracking and vacuum towers, which allow for the main process of the refinement of petroleum into gasoline or diesel. These attacks started early in January, which caused enough damage and a bit of a panic installed within Russian ranks, let's say it like this, because initially it was thought that the biggest refinery that was hit, a Lukoil one, and another from Rosneft, were going to be shut down for 3 to 6 months. Unfortunately, people panicked a little bit. The refineries are due to open within the last week of March or first week of April, mostly because instead of completely rebuilding the said column, most of these refineries had multiple other units to do just the same job. So there will be a loss for the moment of capacity. It's not gonna take out the refineries as a whole. However, this indication, and a lot of Russian bloggers spoke about it, is that why did it came so late? This kind of fatalism, which, if you guys remember how we would react to this if it was 2022, is a bit typical of what has happened to a lot of people during this special military operation. When most of us, I think, have given up the illusion that things would go faster after a certain point. No, now we all agree, at least if you are in this space, we all agree that it's going to be a long deal. And we're not out of here for at least 2025, as announced by our beloved Tuvan Baboon. So, what's the deal? Why now? What's the goal? Well, the goal, unfortunately, is pretty simple. And it regards, first of all, the disruption of diesel production within the European shelf of the Russian Federation. Second of all, on top of that disruption, it is also a attempt to, of course, bring in the eyes and brains of the Ukrainian leadership to bring much needed air defenses around these refineries. And then pull it up from the front, which would make it easier for aircraft and other unmanned aircraft to operate within this Russian air defense, formerly air defense defended areas. And the third point of these attacks is to have something to show. The PR factor will be always there with Ukraine, this you know already. I think as an operation, it's not too bad because obviously it's precise enough. So they are helped by the fact that these columns are huge, between 25 and 32 meters, depending where you actually are, which makes them so easy to reach actually, because given they're high enough, you don't need to be extremely precise with your drone, especially if you see the kind of drones they're sending them. They are 7-meter wingspan, they are just shrunk Bayraktars, high endurance, of course, and apparently highly reactive to input coordinates. There has been talk about maybe these drones have a SATCOM or air relay type of video feed. I do not believe that, especially not the SATCOM, because it would blow the price of the drone immensely. And on top of it, you would need a rather good camera to put on it. You cannot do what the Russians did with one of the Shahids, where they put like a $40 or $50 camera. So, what's the real goal? Real goal is clearly and simply to disrupt refined products. The refined products chain need to be disrupted. This would, on one side, make for a loss on the Russian side, Russian Federation, economic one, because no exports most of the time. But also, most importantly, it would also pressure the internal Russian market. If you put enough percentage of refining capacity out of usage, then the Russian Federation would not have enough refined products, logical, and then prices are going to go up, and the state is going to be forced to ration somewhat. This, of course, is a bit stupid, because Russia can always use Belarus refineries for that. It can also, in the worst case scenario, as I said to a friend of mine, they can play offset with the Chinese, or God forbid with the Indians, which is they will sell them oil and then contract a part of the oil refined for themselves. That's called an offset. This offset, in my opinion, would be welcome because it would stabilize the current account surplus between Russia and China. The Russians are still being little greedy bastards. Let's call it like this, by not willing to further the surplus, or reduce rather the surplus with the Chinese trade. In my opinion, being greedy is not always good in this case, in these scenarios, especially as China is and has been a lifeline for Russia the last 2 years. And therefore, I think a small purchase from the Chinese between 2 and 3 billion dollars worth of refined products wouldn't be breaking the Russian bank, and it would allow for a complete and total protection from Ukrainian drones. And also, as I said, you establish a working relationship, which gives the Chinese the incentives to do a little bit more for you. So the Ukrainian objective so far is not really working, but it looks more like death by 1,000 cuts. Right now there are mosquito bites. Right now they don't take the refineries wholesale out, but they stop them for a while to see what can be done to put the refineries at the ready state as soon as possible. And also, the biggest problem is that so far it has been very few obvious and proven signs of the capability of Russians to shoot them down by electrical warfare, because that's the most important part. The point is to restart what happened with the Mugins during 2022-2023, where the Mugins, in average, would fall out of the sky 80%, and you have to shoot 2 of them. So, is it working? Is it a good strategy? No. I want to say that this strategy is stupid and shows exactly why the Ukrainian leadership has got it all wrong, and also why strategically they are midgets. Tactically, they can be pretty good. Let's admit that, but strategically, they are absolute midgets. As Russian said, this should have been done 2 years ago. Of course, did they have the assets for that? I would surmise that yes. They've proven that with their 241, 243, they could do this. They could also try this with the Mugins, and as you may remember, they used the Mugins massively against Crimea, which was retarded. And the most important part is that even now the damages are not big enough. They are delaying, they are grinding a little bit the Russian capabilities. Also, they are also grinding the Russian patience, but overall, it's not that bad. Quite the contrary. And the most important part is that the only thing that makes this so obvious is that for every attack they're doing, they're receiving one attack back. As I wrote, there was an attack in Konotop on a repair yard for locomotives. We don't know exactly what was destroyed, how much was destroyed, but we saw pictures of things being on fire. So let's see, let's wait for it. There was the strike in Odessa as a counter value, although I do think it wasn't related at all with the oil strikes. It was just a target of opportunity because it was targeting a very shitty Ukrainian unit. Most of them are, but the loot deserves a lot worse. And most importantly, the Russian counter-value so far has been to really attrite and reduce the Ukrainian capability of defending themselves against Russian air raids, of course. So my biggest problem right now is the following. Why now? Why so little? Because it's not a mass attack. We are not seeing 15 refineries at once with 300-400 drones. Of course, it would be very complicated for Ukrainians to do that, given that one of the drones that was shot down had the mark 924 on one arch of a wing. You would need at least 4 of them, so you divide 924 by 4, and you are roughly at 234 something. So we have roughly 250 drones that were produced of that specific drones, and all, or we surmise that all have been used with various effects. As I said, some of these drones have been hitting buildings in Moscow. Other drones have been hitting shit in Pakistan, and others have been, of course, more lethal, as we can see, with some Russian infrastructure. One of those drones that I was speaking about hit the Lipetsk steel factory, just punched a hole on the roof. There was video with brickwork falling down in without much damage. The same kind of drones also attacked Taganrog multiple times. So generally, we can see where they are striking more or less. But the biggest problem, as I said, is that because there is not this massive attack, the Russians so far are feeling the danger. They're just not feeling the capital results that such attacks should have produced. So for instance, when the Russians launched 15 Shahids per objective area, often 2, 3, or 4 objectives, you can see the damage. Also, although the Ukrainians speak about interceptions, the fact that they are getting completely crazy and the Russians are insisting with the Shahids tells us a completely different story. So, a bit like as with the USVs in the Black Sea, so far the results have not been good for the Russian defense. When it comes to refineries, of course, because for other installations and locations, those drones have been doing a lot worse, which is why a lot of Russians now are calling for the state to intervene, because, as you know, most of the refineries are in private hands, so the state has no incentives to intervene on the defense. And there is this theory floating about the oil that it is in fact a ploy from the Kremlin to spoil some of these assets in order for the Kremlin to buy them and then, of course, protect them back. It would make sense for the Lukoil assets, mostly because, as you know, Lukoil for almost a year kept sending oil in Bulgaria, which in return was sold by Bulgaria to the Ukrainian armed forces in a very fun twist of fate. And therefore, as many things I've said before, sometimes these people find out. And accordingly, there is this theory that a lot of people from the Lukoil board are paying for that small misstep, with at least 3 of the major bodies of the company, including the vice president, ending their lives a bit earlier than intended. Is this true? Do I believe it? Honestly, I wouldn't have a problem with that. if it is indeed true that Lukoil chose profits instead of the country, so be it. We are not speaking about some games. This is a war, and a Russian defeat would be extremely far more costly for Russia than just some oil profits. What I do think, though, is that not as much as the fact that this is a deliberate ploy by the Kremlin to, force a back buy of these refineries. I really think that there is a problem of mismanagement and slow reaction on the part of the state due mostly to legal problems, legalese. So you're private, you should take your own measures, and if it's not okay, we're going to come and defend you. The biggest problem, though, again, is that while very, 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 very visually striking and real damages, there is nothing there for the moment that is slowing down the Russian production for itself. And this is actually due to the fact that Russia right away understood the ploy and cut gasoline exports for 6 months. This means that, of course, it's going to be a loss of revenue, but at the same time, it means that the Russian market, on top of Russian military, will not be losing. Any stock, because there's no exports, and Russia exported over 34% of the refined gasoline and refined products abroad. So that's a rather large share of the pie that's going to stay in Russia. So will palliate any kind of loss in production. Why I think that this is total amateur hour from the Ukrainian side, not as much as the exploitation of the target. But most important is actually the timing and the targeting. And also the biggest problem of this is the apparent lack of understanding of the Russian refining process and refiner park. The Russians actually issued a list yesterday with over 80 projects ongoing, 36 in function, 8 in refection or maintenance, and the rest in ongoing building and state of service. This means that within 2 years, the Russians will have replaced the current park. Of course, the logic is not to lose a column in each and every refinery, because for some it would be the last. But it means that there is a redundancy there. Plus, as I said, there's Belarus, there's also logic with China. So the biggest problem of strategic literacy is, first of all, as I said, why not before? Second of all, why not far more at the same time? And the third and most important part is, why attacking refineries while the power grid, first of all, and power plants are far more useful for whole clusters of rail traffic, energy production. I mean, just doing to the Russians what the Russians did to the Ukrainians in 2022. Of course, I'm not pro-Ukraine. I'm just saying, on that scale, this choice, this very particular choice, is extremely puzzling because there are walkarounds to that system. For Ukraine, though, the problem is that if the Russian wants to completely exterminate, transfer oil and gasoline terminals on the few ports that the Ukrainians have still available, they could do it, they should do it. Therefore, the impact of this kind of war for now is extremely far more heavy on the Ukrainian side than on the Russian side. And this is what I'm saying. This is the amateurism I was speaking about. I'm not saying that the Russians are not going at it for, a reason of their choice. Simply for the moment, there is no need. But if this thing goes on, I think that the Russians should think of just, replicating, giving the favor back and be done with it. And as I said, the move to ban the gasoline exports initially to me seemed extremely harsh for 6 months, but now I understand. I think that the Russians know what the danger is coming from, and they are trying to find a solution and putting countermeasures. And as I said, the best countermeasures for the moment would be to add massive nets, a bit like the ones that are used by the Ukrainians themselves to try and stop the Lancets or against the air defense systems like the EST. A bit like the Iranians are doing, although the Iranians are using a different type of drones that would come at them, not this huge ass 150 kilogram drones that are half filled with fuel and half filled with a payload. So, right now, as I said, visually it's extremely striking. It's pleasing for the Ukrainians because it's one of the small victories that they have. But at the same time, right now they're throwing shit from the window. It's not really advancing their cause. It's not also hurting Russia as much. And it's also influencing the oil price slightly, but enough to actually help Russia gain more money, because instead of selling gasoline, which was always, as I said, a smaller part of Russia's hydrocarbon export, although with more value, this was less than 30% of that basket. So be it. That's what the Russians have right now. Until we find a solution, we're going to try and do whatever we're doing right now. But most of the time, if it passes, we're just going to rebuild. It's rather cynical, but the whole point is to also show fortitude towards the Ukrainians while striking them back, of course. I would start panicking when they will start hitting multiple fracking towers per objectives. So far, it has never happened. It was always one, attacked by more than one drone. But other than that, we will need to see how the Ukrainians are going to actually try and solve this. Now, this is going hand to hand with this absurd attempt at Belgorod and Kursk oblasts. It's very stupid, and actually, as I have already said, I understand why they're doing it. I just don't understand why they're accepting to do it. I already made a description. We're speaking about a front line of over 120 kilometers in a straight line. with 3 to 4 groups, maximum 200, 300 people, tops, about 30, 40 vehicles, about 5 to 10 fire support assets, of which at least 3 have been lost. They've lost 6 tanks, 5 engineering / armed recovery vehicles, at least 3, 4 BMPs, 2, 3 M113s or IPRs, at least 2 MRAPs or assorted vehicles, and between 50 and 70 guys. So I do not really understand. And last year a lot of people panicked. I had to grab everybody by the balls and explain minute by minute what happened and show to everybody that these guys had pushed in Russian territory for like 5 to 6 kilometers, and within the same day they were out. But here, every single day, they don't even manage to actually go into Russia proper beyond 200 to 300 meters. They get smacked, and they flee back, and then are trying to skirt all over this Russian Ukrainian border, trying to find holes. And sometimes it works better than others, but so far, right now, it has been an absolute shit show. And the great advantage is that it shows to everybody how retarded the Ukrainian GUR is, so Kiki Budala, and also the real status of the Avdiivka. Of course, a lot of people were going to say these guys are clowns. They go there, they do a photo shoot, and they fuck up. However, we'll see to the end how many of these assholes die. Although we already know that at least one moron from SSO has been killed. But the most important problem of this situation is why? I mean, honestly, they have a problem with ammo, not big, not small. They have a problem with assets, not big, not small. And they are just wasting. They have probably wasted enough for a company right now. A company worth of armor, ARVs, and APCs plus other shit. It's extremely interesting to see. And there are tasks that the Russians are doing, and that I personally find completely crazy. But then suddenly the Avdiivka and those guys from the GUR are even worse. Because since they're planned, since they put themselves to the staging sites, they got fucking hit by Iskander, they got hit by clusters, they got hit by artillery. They decided to go to the attack in a completely non-self-supporting distance and area. They then asked for a second front apparently on the same area. It's just a fucking shit show. Like, the whole thing makes no sense. It is so bad that at the end, after getting their asses handed to them, now they put some bullshit taunt like 5-year-old kids. Oh my god, Putin, we expect you to come and give us your surrender. I'm like, what the actual fuck? And to us, it's good. I mean, it's sorry to say it like this, it's easy kills and it's massive losses for the Ukrainians given the type of equipment they're losing there. And also, it gives actually a pretty nice view of how much the Russian border defense in the area has changed. Last year in May, it was a shit show. I mean, like, these guys had captured a BTR the first very hour, and then they would have fucking gone around to stroll to the city, and then poof, they disappeared. Okay, there were some kills, there were some Humvees lost and shit like that. It wasn't that important. Here we have literally all the tanks engaged in this shit show has been lost. All the RVs engaged in this shit show have been lost. Majority of APCs lost. We see on tape 50 to 60 guys getting smacked. Like, it's huge, guys. For such a small front, 50, 60 Kia and 25, 30 vehicles it's huge. And it puts everybody in that shitty operation in such a bad light that I would have stopped the advancement, I would have stopped the attack from day one, or would have tried something else, but just not that. Because it's not that they're trying different areas that they can co-support. You know, they're not mutually supporting areas of attack. They tried Kozinka, but at the same time they were busy with trying to push in Tavozhanka, then they got fucked, so then they launched the Kursky Tetkino attack, but they never went past Avdiivka, so within Ukraine still. And then they did this absolute amazing harakiri when they just crossed the border or tried to and blew on Russian mines, 80 GM. Second tank comes by, fires 2 shots, probably gets an FPV, gets the fuck out. Ends up in the middle of a field somewhere. Like, okay, no problem. I have no issue with that. If you are stupid enough to do this, you deserve to lose everything you have. But still, I don't get it. And we brainstormed, like, everybody in the group was thinking like there must be something else. What's going on? No, there's nothing. This is the very cruel game that is being played in Ukraine right now. On one side you have Putin, but at least there is military and territorial objective. But on the other side you have Budanov, who basically throws perfectly good humans into mid-grider and perfectly good material to be lost like it was nothing. With the attack, the Ukrainian tank losses enter a territory which they simply cannot sustain. We're speaking about, given the influx from the losses of the Belgorod and Kursk Oblast, we are at 15 tanks per week. So it's like we are aiming at 1,500 tanks with these kind of losses. Something that Ukraine doesn't have. If the Ukrainians start throwing shit like this, we are entering a territory which the Ukrainians cannot sustain themselves. And of course, everybody would say, but what are you saying? How are you saying 1,500? Because you're losing 750. So you will have to have those 1,500 in order to, just replace what you lost. And nobody can afford that to Ukraine right now, so they better fucking stop what they're doing. But they will not do. Okay, Belgorod and Kursk are going to be stopped after the elections because that was the whole fucking point. But these mad charges, we're seeing them in Novomikhalovka. Just single tank, just looking by, gets FPV'd. Guys get re-FPV'd while they try to evacuate the last crew member. We got one lone STRV 122A in the middle of bumfuck in Terni, once again getting hit by FPV. I mean, we are entering a phase where the Ukrainians right now are going through a shit ton of equipment due to the fact that they need to balance ammunition saving, tactical retreat, and generally just trying to hold the line, playing zone as much as they can. But what is going to happen? What's happening in Belgorod? What's probably going to happen still tomorrow is fucking nonsense. It's just throwing shit away for free, and they're doing it. They're happy to do it. And you got most of NAFO accounts in Twitter just lapping propaganda, and this is unfortunate to say that as it is. To my personal evident proof that most of these accounts have handlers and are astroturfing. I mean, look at the Glauds, look at the Gettys, look at the Spaghetti Cossacks, Bandera Fela. All these morons are just repeating the same bullshit. Like, it doesn't even matter how can you geolocate the shit for them within Ukrainian territory, or as you show a pile of body from the Ukrainian side, or as you show Lancet strikes, as you actually see where the fuck they are for real. So you can see the astroturfing there, and it was something that had pointers and things were prepared. These guys made so many fakes about Belgorod. There was a video from Almaty, there was a video from early in the war. And then there was the taunting, like, oh my god, karma, you read what you saw. Okay, no problem. Then we're going to continue with this repertoire, and you're going to have Iskanders in city blocks in Kryvyi Rog. You know, like, it's a matter of who's got the bigger dick. And unfortunately, Ukrainians have tiny dicks. Sometimes they work, but most of the time, a bigger dick will do a better job of demolishing whatever hole you want to demolish. So, right now it's pathetic and it's a waste of perfectly good material and human. Especially as maybe you're gonna learn it soon enough. A publication in Ukraine called Focus is having a bit of a scandal because they said that there was a new trend within the Ukrainian military. It, of course, regarded money, but instead of having to pay money for not going to war, money was paid by commanders in order to recruit people for drones, for tank drivers, and for infantry. And this is the biggest problem right now. The situation is so bad that everybody's paying. It's pure madness. It's nonsense, and this thing is going on and on and on and on and on. I published the Makiv village when there were no men around. Everybody was put into a van, driven off to the nearest military base, whatever on it. But this is what is going to befell Ukraine. I'm not saying tomorrow, but this is the sure way, sure path towards that. And this brings us to the front. And the front is going pretty bad, as I said, for Ukraine right now. Geolocated situation in Mikhailivka is bad. They are way beyond where they should be. So they basically abandoned the city center for good. And they don't seem to understand how bad it is for them to lose Novy Mikhailivka right now. Sometimes I'm just saying that if you cannot do anything for it, nobody can blame you. And in this case, it's really that. It's like, for some reason, the whole swaths of Ukrainian front sometimes don't have the shells to fire back, or they don't want to fire back because they are in danger from Russian counter battery. But overall, no, Mikhailivka is gone. Neverskot was gone. If they advance from Pobeda down, they're gonna really start threatening that 0532, and therefore Ugledar. And I think Ugledar is going to be a huge success if it happens quick enough, which I do not believe given the way things are shaped to, but chains are moving. We're still expecting the turning situation when both sides recognize a certain Russian advance, but so far I failed to really see it. Maybe a couple of years, but I failed to really see. Then we have the continuation of Avdiivka, which, as I said, Semenivka is feeling the heat. Orlovka is taken, Tonenka is taken. Perdishi is mostly emptied from Ukrops. Russia has maybe 25 to 35% of the settlement. And we are expecting, honestly, that they are in Semenivka, they push Ukrainians as far as possible so we can evacuate. We can see, the Abrams evacuated. I think would be the biggest fuck up and the biggest PR fiasco for the US. And it's not, helicopters 60 kilometers, 55 kilometers from front getting hit by clusters and KH-35. No, that's nothing. No, what's the reality is that Russian troops posing with a captured, not what they've done so far, like small photo shoots, which for some of them were fatal. But I'm saying like literally, Abrams on a hauler gone to Kubinka. Easy peasy. Probably the Leopard soon enough is going to be evacuated. 2 more Bradleys, 8 in total in the area that is completely clear of Ukrainians and far enough from drones. So overall, things are not looking good for the Ukrainians in general. The only success they have for the moment is really Zaporozhye, where the Russians are going very, very slowly, I think. And although they've entered the routine multiple times, they haven't managed to sustain a foothold. And of course, the Ukrainians are not in full control of the city, but still, same bullshit. What does not in full control, or what does this way of, undecisiveness has to do with the general aspect of the front line when it comes to the Avdiivka front. Rabotino-Verbovoye, for instance, is going slow. Avdiivka is going rather fast. Why Avdiivka is going rather fast, as I said, because Russians are now walking to territory they've never been. They've never pushed so far. Robotini, Russians know every single trench because they dug them. And therefore, I am a bit impatient when it comes to that. Then we have the front around Bahmut. As I said, biggest problem is that an attempt made to bypass Klishivka wasn't that successful, but it still brought a rather deep advancement within the city. But once again, it doesn't really matter because the whole area has been completely fucked up. So the only thing you're good at trying to entrench yourself in Klishivka is getting a hate drone or FPV or, God forbid, artillery hitting you. However, some things have changed. So the Ukrainians have now built Coplerones and defensive and reply lines almost all over some problematic areas. So next to Nikopol, in the Energodar area, in front of Zaporozhye, on the flank of Zaporozhye, that one goes far enough, and although pretty stupid, because it's a triple line within 50 meters. Therefore, a good, solid fab Orion PK 500 is going to make life miserable for people in those trenches soon. But overall, the front is going on one side. There is no real pushback. And I think mentally the Ukrainians themselves are entering this cycle, and despite whatever they do, they're not stopping the Russians. It might look a slow grind, but it's inexorable. You are not stopping them. So at some point, your idea, what starts running to your head is that if we completely break, what happens? If the unit next to me breaks and Russians go through and then exploit on our rear, what happens? This is what I've prompted, I think, all the Macron bullshit and this sudden overzealousness from Germany, Poland, and France to rearm or propose deals and all this shit. Most importantly is the money. There has never been so much money promised to Ukraine for armament, with of course a nuance that most of this armament needs to be produced, and so far it would take between 2 and 4 years to get the whole gamut, and it's not even that much. We're speaking of maximum 112 self-propelled howitzers and about 80 towed howitzers, so about 200. Of course, now Greece has sent 755 millimeters from the Second World War. Those are real game changers. America is now boasting the arrival of the world beater ASV M1117, and suddenly we hear about potential transfers of tanks left and right. Some guys talk about the Type 90, other people talk about more Abrams. Some are floating the idea of trying to scavenge some M60s. And of course, the usual is trying to go at Cyprus to abandon its 280s, which of course is not going to happen for obvious reasons. But overall, where the Ukrainians are lacking right now is more and more barrels, and Scholz literally said that we are going to start the process of utilizing proceeds from the Russian frozen assets in order to have a coalition of long-range artillery. While the coalition for tanks, coalition for planes was okay in my book. I mean, like, there was a potential, Europe could have scrapped 300 to 400 Leopards if they really wanted, not the measly 60, then 80, then 101. But they didn't. With artillery is even worse, because that's one of the things that Europeans do not have many of them. We have had multiple images now of one of the biggest storage sites in Italy, completely missing its M109L. We have seen some storage sites in private enterprises, two German storage sites, one Belgian, that you already know, with the unfortunate case of both Leopard 1A5 and the M109. And generally, everybody's trying to scrap shit around in order to give to the Ukrainians right now, and we're going back to the same problem we had last year, which is they're putting together an Arbat that has nothing remotely similar, and adding the M1117, in my opinion, is going to make it even worse. But once again, who the fuck cares? The point is for the Ukrainians to have something to do pew-pew. And at the end, for the Russians, it's just going to make it easier on medium term. Then we have the ammunition situation, where on top of whatever was promised, that now we know is not going to be stocked, and that also now we know is not going to come right away, because initially it was, remember, 800,000, then Pavel found another 200,000, so a whole million. And then now we learn that only about 300,000 has been funded, and maybe an extra 200,000 deliverable from June to end of the year, which actually is even worse than what the Europeans are supposed to deliver. But let's see, you never know. And then we have some announcements that are being made left and right, but are still not on the ground. So there was this hint that Biden would approve ATACMS. We still don't have proper confirmation. The money situation is becoming problematic. And one of the things that is becoming most problematic, in my opinion, right now, is the fact that the hryvnia is still pegged. So whatever the exchange rate for the hryvnia right now, it's not true, it's fully artificial. Pegged to the dollar, just made sure that Ukraine wouldn't completely tank right away. But this is where things get more complicated, because actually by having this pegging right now, Ukraine is just suiciding itself down the line. And at some point, they would have to let the inflation loose, which will simply kill off the few first years of, let's say, post-war. What is extremely weird, though, is that operationally the Russians are doing all the right things right now. It's taking a bit more time because it's the first defensive line out of 3 in the area. But majorly the Russians are not really messing around. Of course, there are losses. Of course, now they are back to a completely discovered situation when they just cannot anchor themselves to whatever ground they can find. But they are still advancing, and the most important part, they are covering the very same gaps that I spoke about before. So before the counter-offensive started. And to me, if the goals that I set out are at least 50% attained. So first of all, is a complete gap reduction of the Rabotino pocket. Second of all, it was for the Avdiivka that's done. Acquisition of a buffer that needs to be more or less around Karlivka reservoir at the end of the offensive is still working on progress. The advancement towards Ugledar is still work in progress, but there are extremely good signs regarding that. But the most important part is there hasn't been any land taken back by Ukraine for now. We're almost end of March, okay, half March, 7 months. Last so-called takeover was early September when they completely cleared Robotina, although they announced it the 23rd of August. September, October, November, December, January, February, mid-March. Yep. It's hilarious. Very good, very good. Excellent strategy from the Ukrainian side. And then there is the bigger problem, the elephant in the room. The Ukrainians are losing a absolutely unholy amount of air defenses and air assets and air sensors. HIMARS has gone almost a wall. We have the lowest level of strikes so far. Maybe that has to do with the totally decoy HIMARS getting ventilated and those blurry thermal images that weren't HIMARS, but apparently maybe they were. Or the bunch of idiots that were hidden in a forest 40 kilometers from the front that also got ventilated. Those were not HIMARS for sure. But somehow, the number of HIMARS strikes has been completely absent. Of course, we have some shots left and right, but compared even with 2 months ago, Ukrainians are forced to make shitty reruns, as I already posted. Now, there is a factor of Ukrainians now receiving some more capable weapons, and we will see how Russians are going to deal with them. And one of those weapons is the AS, French air-to-ground series. Right now, most of it has been AS-250, and mostly inertial strike missiles, so not laser-guided strike. This, of course, makes everything much more different, because if it was a laser strike via, let's say, a shark drone or whatever, like sometimes it has been the case with the Critic laser-guided round, the ISM might miss, but most importantly, we see the ISM 250 being mounted on only one hard point, so it's maximum 2, and it brings the Ukrainian pilots way too close from the line of contact, so extremely vulnerable to Russian air-to-air or ground-to-air. So, what is the ISM bringing to the table? Mostly the fact that it doesn't need like a Zdamyar to be lobbed by a rather high altitude. Given that the ammunition is powered, the pilot just needs to accelerate, do a giraffe up to 500 meters, release, the propulsion system takes over, and then it can completely drop low until it's far away enough to raise higher and then go to the deployment base. Of course, this doesn't always work, as we saw with the latest piano that got burned. But it's still a gamble that, in my opinion, works. If you're gonna lose like 2 or 3 pallets per month for Ukraine right now, it's true that it's not optimal, but it would still allow you to operate. The biggest problem would be the planes, of course, but with the potential arrival of F-16, even that, if you're desperate as Ukrainians right now, even that can cover that situation. Now, one of the biggest problems I have with when I look at the map right now is that it more or less looks like a rather continuous line. There are less salients than before. There are a couple of them, of course, they're still there, but there are less salients than before. One of those problems being Belgorod next to Siversk. And I think the Russians, if the line is going to be rather better positioned than it used to be, might well start to plan for a different general thrust. And this, of course, would have been actually Zaporozhye, but with fortification works in the area, I very much doubt they will try there. I think that more and more elements are aligning for attacking Kharkov. I wasn't prominent of that at all, but the attacks during the election day, part of it moving from Kharkov, border areas from north of Ukraine being a problem instead of course, the attacks from normal regular troops down south of Ukraine. So all this might well turn it into operation from the north, even if it would be something a lot smaller than what people think. However, there are no signs from the Russian side. Politically, and this airy silence is well there, but there are no signs of 3-4 tank brigades being prepared to line up around Kharkov. So we are entering that phase that we had more or less in March last year, when everything was going more or less okay, Abdel-Mahrmud, okay, losses and everything, but it was advancing and we knew it was a question of time. And everything is going very slow right now, not as much because it's going slow on the ground, but it's going slow because it's a grind. And right now we're into the grind phase when everything is going to go to the end and then something's going to crack and it's going to crumble. And so far, all indications are that the line under Avdiivka towards Ugledar is going to fall. So the 0532 is going to be the weakest point, the weakest link, when they're going to completely take over the highway from Ugledar up to Krakow, and then the Ukrainians have a problem. Because once the line is there, as I said, you make the Zapor front a lot more narrow, and you start skirting from the side, right side, to whatever Ukrainian formations there are. And as usual, as I've told you multiple times before, once the defendant has its side squished, you have your side as the offender. extended. It's literally a pie chart. If you reduce one part of the pie, you augment the other one. It's pretty simple. Although here in this case, it means that the enemy is going to have much more problems in hiding in that patch of land that you are reduced them to. You have reduced them to defend themselves. Now, there are a couple of things that needs to be said as well. Is that from latest images, Russian UMPK production is absolutely fucking mind-boggling. In January, they had produced 800 kits, or 800 kits were slated for production. In February, 1,100 kits were slated for production and had been produced because one RBK 500 had the planning module number 1093, which is literally 1093 at least guidance kits produced for February 2024. Which means that if everything was dropped 1,100, of course this was dropped around 10th of March, so for February they hadn't spent everything they had, but it means that if everything was dropped, it would require, now we know that the Su-34s can drop 4 at once, it would require 260 sorties at full rack, or 520 at half rack. So basically 520 sorties with 2 bombs, 260 with 4 bombs. For 30 days, if you go to 260 sorties, you are going to be at over 85 sorties a day. Just let it fucking sink. 85 sorties a day. You cut it by 2 with 2 flights with a day, it's 42 something. Compare this with 50 IS 250 given by France to use for Ukraine. No comment. This war is becoming exactly what it should have been from the get-go, thanks to some cheap-ass shitty kit called literally Unified Module of Gliding Bomb, UMPK. And if you are looking for a game changer, don't look at Lancet, it is a game changer. Don't look at Shahid, it is a game changer. But right now, the game changer, payload-wise, ease of manufacture, and result-wise, cost-effectiveness, is the goddamn MPK. It's not fancy, it's not good-looking. We're all waiting for the UMPB 30, but goddamn it, that shit claps. And more videos are with RBK, so basically cluster ammunition. It's a Crocodile Dundee moment. That's not a cluster. This is a cluster. And we've seen the videos, like, it's not even comparable. That shit completely blows. Like, a whole tree line gone. Have fun. So overall, right now, we are looking at the Russians being at their peak THD. And I said in the group, I think that 2024 is going to be unimpeded rape for the Russian side, unless something really happens. Ukrainian side, but it would have to be fundamental. We're not speaking about recruiting for 500,000. It would be like literally foreign powers coming in and fighting the war for Ukraine. And 2025 will be, I think, the moment when the Ukrainians would have figured out a couple of things, but Russian aviation would have different weaponry, and the West would be moving closer to, after the Trump victory at the election, to either doing something extremely stupid, either completely disengaged from Ukraine. And then I think negotiations are going to happen. But the biggest problem is that, and once again, I'm going to say it what I said in the group, so at least it's said to everybody. I think that by the end of this year, beginning of next year, the air defense assets, legacy air defense assets, would be completely fucked on the Ukrainian side, which means that they would have to rely on scarcer, more expensive, and less proliferating Western air defenses. And there Russia would be exactly where it wanted, which is having the Ukrainians defend themselves with weapons from a military alliance whose doctrine is not air defense, ground-based air defense, but which is air-to-air. So once we move to that logic, Ukraine is going to get pounded like shit. But so far they can still manage in a way or another. And with attrition going the way it is right now, by next year, legacy systems are gone, and therefore the danger would be for modern Occidental systems, Patriots, SAMP-T, NASAMS, Iris, call them what you want. So yeah, guys, this was more or less the thread. If you have questions, if you want to intervene, it's up to you. And as for the thing, yeah, I'm a bit tired. I'm sorry for that. So yeah, guys, if you want to intervene, if you want to have any kind of question, fire, shoot, I'll manage. Yeah, go on. I didn't. If you want to intervene, just. Okay, let's go with Kremlin first, and I then next. Go on, Kremlin.
No, hey guys. Yeah. First of all, yeah, I'm gonna make a little bit of a joke. I'm a pervert. I like to masturbate to exploding high Mars. You guys know the reference.
Yeah.
The second thing is, man, I keep on thinking about this. Like these sort of drones, they can become a pretty big problem, right? Because it's kind of expensive to take them down, right? And if you're a country that has such a large size, right? It's having air defense everywhere is like it's not feasible, right? It's really not feasible. So, I mean, you could think, okay, maybe you can start working on some sort of electronic warfare, but even that, it's not foolproof. And I'm thinking like maybe Russia should start going just to produce something like really cheap that would be pretty effective. Just go for triple A's. What do you guys think?
Just start training a bunch of hawks or eagles or something to take them all out.
Actually, to be honest, those drones do not have the same power, because that's the thing. They looked at the Bayraktar, but the engines they are using right now are not powerful enough So what would be a first solution would be wire nylon nets and stuff like that on height, because the great advantage of the targets they're hitting right now is that they're, as I said, very tall. So they can literally plunge on it without needing to really calculate their drop very finely. Once you cover them with this shitty umbrella, it's not going to work every time. It's not. I don't mean this is not foolproof, but this is going to reduce the capability of these drones, and they're going to force the Ukrainians to try and send more of these. More drones means that because these drones are not catapultable, they do not use a catapult like, for instance, the Zalas or the Lancets. These drones need a runway. Having all these drones being set off from this runway means that you are going to have a huge problem, because you need the space and you're going to be visible. Of course, this is not going to stop them from producing them. It's not that, but if you start killing off some of the launch crews, if you start damaging some of the launch infrastructure, you're going to force them to go into hiding and start, pushing the boundaries and starting to space the launches and stuff like that. But most important part is indeed it's a multi-spectrum answer. First of all, it's going to be normal AA systems, but in most cases, it's not that much the absence of these AA systems. In most cases, as you said, it's a huge-ass country, and the radius of defense is the best at the border, because there is the smallest radius. The more you open, the more space it is for the drone to start maneuvering and following waypoints and hit what you want. The advantage, though, is that now you know that they're going after refineries. Well, it's not that complicated to see how they're gonna fucking try and get next to a refinery. So there are enough Tunguskas, for instance, to just start, pressing them around, and in the worst case scenario, just mounting them on trucks, parking these trucks somewhere in weight of detection. But no, the solutions or the possibilities are endless in this case, especially for Russia. But the biggest problem is the counter value part, because defending without attacking is just delaying the inevitable. So you're gonna start shooting, I don't know, they're producing 250 drones for like 3-4 months. You're gonna shoot 240, but still you're gonna have like 15 they're gonna go through, and what kind of damage this is going to do, you never know. So the point is, defense is good, but defense is gonna give up even a little at some point. So the real idea is, on top of that, defense is an offense system, and as I said, is to force them to be more visible on the launches, is to force them to start being careless or taking risks, and at the same time inflicting damage. Like, as I said, you're gonna fucking attack a locomotive repair yard, you're gonna blow up whatever remains from the Kremenchuk refinery, you're gonna blow up what remains of the Ukraine's refinery, you're gonna start attacking thermal power plants. The thing is with the Ukrainians is that they learned what counter value was in October 2022. It lasted until February 2023, then it stopped. And then the Russians went more after actual military targets, which had a profound impact, because we're seeing like some of the strikes that everybody said were for civilians. We learned they were not civilians. Some of the strikes that people said were, I don't know, in mall parkings and shit like that. We've later learned that at least that's what is happening, is that there is some destruction going on, because you cannot explain the lack of ammunition, lack of troops. I mean, a lot of these things. So my idea is counter values should be privileged even over defending those assets. because it makes sure that in the best case scenario for Ukraine is lose-lose. This is where counter value is important, because when the Ukrainians can launch a shitty drone of 15 to 20 kilograms payload, Russians can send 3-4 cruise missiles with 230, 250 kilograms explosive and 400 kilograms of payload. So the difference is completely out of this world. And the logic would be first and foremost to think about counter value. This will not probably stop the Ukrainians from doing some shenanigans, but it would hamper them immensely, tremendously. So yeah, sorry. Hey guys, please, if someone wants to add something.
I'm good. This was a very informative space. Thank you. You answered my question when you were just talking to Kremlin. So
Okay, no problem. Okay, let's see what PS Stalin has to offer. Oh, he pulled his request. Guys, if you want to intervene, up to you, don't you worry. So we are going to add 2 more things, and these are also in the not so distant future that's going to happen. First of all, with all the defensive work that's being done by the Ukrainians, there are a couple of things that are shining by their absence. First of all, there are no roads built in between the defenses. Probably going to happen later on. But basically, the line that goes from more or less Kamensk to Pokrovsk, south and southeast of Zaporozhye, is not linked by a specific road. So they are cutting through the normal highway, but there are no bypass roads. I hope that the Ukrainians don't do them, but with all the working going on, not making those bypass roads that were so important for the Russians. Initially in Kherson, when they were beyond the Dnieper, and then after that in Zaporozhye, is I think going to show how much the Ukrainians are just LARPing as a military force. Also, that could just say that they're not scared, so they think right now they don't need it. Well, I could believe that for Zaporozhye, no problem. I cannot believe that we're not seeing that for Pokrovsk in the Donetsk Oblast. If things go south pretty quick, so basically the Russians empty the first line of defense in Avdiivka and then advance 5 to 6 kilometers beyond that, they're going to push the whole line over, so going to facilitate the advance towards Cheretino. Once they're in Cheretino, as I said, they just need to cut through Berezivka and so on. All this you know already. But that also would mean that the overall Pokrovsk staging point and Pokrovsk logistics towards Konstantinovka are fucked. And the only way to then go around, as I said before, towards the city would be a bypass road. And if that bypass road for some reason is fucked because the Russians come close enough to Pokrovsk to be shelling it by grads, whatever you want to call it, then you will have to have a real bypass road on top of it, about 60 kilometers north of Pokrovsk, and then 60 plus 80 something you're at 100, 120, 140, depending how short or how long you want to do the roads towards Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. So, once again, biggest problem I'm seeing is the Ukrainians are trying to learn things or do things the way we look nice and professional, especially the triple row of Copleron that it was supposed to not stop anything, but now it's like a must. What's going to happen if you don't have those bypass roads? If suddenly you find themselves in the same logic as Avdiivka or Bahmut, and you need to start doing like small dirt roads that were impossible to navigate without getting FPV'd, bombarded, or ATGM'd, or that were not strong enough to sustain larger cargo assets, and then basically get stuck in the ground. So that was the last point I wanted to say, that
Oh boy, we're losing him. Guys, we're losing him. The space is going to close.
so guys, sorry I had a disconnection. Very sorry for the situation. Well, now it was more or less what I wanted to say. Thank you very much for being with me, and have a nice evening. Bye bye.